Well, hello, everybody, and this is podcast number 9, Primitive Substance here, and I've got a real special guest today, all the way from Germany.
Yeah,
Markus Reuter is here,
I
live and
did.
in person. Markus, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
And well, let's start off with I don't know. I looked up your bio. There's so much stuff. It's amazing how much music you've done, and it's fantastic. So I don't know if the listeners know, if anybody's watching, know that you're recording artist, solo performer, collaborator, spans like so many years, and you've got so much things you've done. So my first question was, what when you started with music, what influenced you to do music? What was the bands? Was it something that your parents
Yeah,
explained maybe?
yeah. I mean, really, it's the what it was like the excitement that new music. Well, new as in the kind of music that excites me, right?
Right.
And that was new, that that's really what was always the driver and still is. So the reason why I'm creating so much is because I still have a hunger to discover something that excites me. You
That's
know,
great.
yeah, I think that's really what it is. That's what it always was.
Hmm.
And I've said this many times, but I got very lucky because my mother and uncle took me to a Mike Oldfield show.
Oh, I love Mike Oldfield. Love
Yes,
him.
and that was in '82. That was like
Wow.
when I was barely 10 years old. And he's sort of like the guy who does everything himself, and that's sort of what inspired me. Like and really until I was 20 years old, I wasn't even interested in playing myself.
Wow. How about
Until
that?
then I realized, okay, like in order for my stuff to get out there, I actually need to play myself. And that
Right.
I started, practicing an instrument. But before that, I was just purely going on like my talent to pluck strings and to push down keys, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I noticed that myself. When I get a new instrument, I get inspired to write new music, or even I change the key of my guitar or something. All of a sudden, things
Yes.
happen. I
Yeah,
think that's
exactly.
what musicians need sometimes. They need to bring in new instruments, new people to keep getting inspired because after a while it gets kind of flat and you need something to, get your creativity going again. That's my view anyway.
Exactly. I totally agree. It's the limitations that we can, well, getting a new instrument, you would say that's like adding to the arsenal, let's say. But
Right,
in a way, it's kind of like putting a new limitation on you. You have to explore this new device or this new
right,
tuning or whatever, and that's what I consider to be a limitation, or you could call it a rule or a concept,
right.
right? And then within that, you can create something new, and you can find something that excites you. And really, that's what it is about for me. I saw a couple of people, talk about this. That Rick Rubin, in one of his
Oh
interviews,
yeah, okay.
in his book, he says that as a creator, you should never think about your audience. And I think I know what he means. Like he
Mm,
could have put it a little bit differently, but I
right.
know what he means.
Well,
It's really about satisfying your own interests first, because like how could you survive if you're not looking after yourself first, right?
exactly. Well, I know Rick Rubin from college because he did the first show he ever did with us, Liquid Liquid,
Yeah.
Heart Attack, and Treacherous 3 at the
Uh-huh.
Diplomat Hotel in New York, and it was a bust. Unfortunately, nobody showed up, but that was the early days of Rick Rubin. Isn't that something? And he knew our label 99 Records,
Hmm.
and so I know Rick Rubin from way back. I mean, but look at how he's become. He looked at his own path. So
Yes. Yeah.
how'd you get involved with Guitarcraft and Robert Fripp and that
Yeah, that was
group?
sort of like an accident, but a good one. I had a piano teacher for a while, when I wasn't even wanting to learn piano. Actually, I signed up for like some simple keyboard classes,
Oh, how
like,
about that?
and then like the main guy, he got ill or something, and he found some student from a music unit from a conservatory, and he taught me, and this new guy, and was great, and he mentioned King Crimson to me, and just a couple years later, like 3-4 years later, I found a CD and listened to it, and it was Discipline was the beginning of Elephant Talk, and I
Oh
loved
yeah, great
it. And
stuff.
I remember my first thought was, oh, there are people out there that are actually doing the music that I'm imagining,
How about that?
somehow. And that's how I kind of like discovered Robert Fripp. And just a few months later, I was at a Robert Fripp and the League of Crafty Guitarists show, and on the tables there were like flyers for one of his courses.
Oh, about that.
I was 18 at the time, and I just decided, okay, why don't I go? And I obviously couldn't afford it myself, so I asked my parents, and they helped me out, and I went, and that was in '91.
Wow.
So, and that's how I got involved, and I spent about 7 years
Holy
sort of
smoke.
like officially kind of like going to courses and sort of like teaching, like learning what Robert,
Right.
like he didn't call it teaching, he called it, and he was an instructor back then.
Okay.
But it was very good. Like he was really like the perfect match for me. And also I talked with Robert Fripp about the Chapman stick, and at the very first meeting I had with Robert.
How about that?
And he said, like, okay, Markus, if you want to try it, because like you need to, get your hands on one.
Right.
And then well, that I'm actually playing with Trey Gunn these days.
Right.
But
Well, of course.
back then, who sold me his spare stick.
How
And
about that? I love Trey's playing.
yes,
You
and
know,
that's how I got involved, and that was like 9 years before I met Pat Mastelotto,
how
which was
about that?
the year 2000. And 2005 was when I started working with Pat. In 2010, I started working with Pat and Tony Levin, right?
Right. I
And
saw one
so,
of your shows. In
yeah,
fact, well, I will still go back in time, but I just want to mention that I live a town over from Dunellen, New Jersey, and
oh yeah,
you guys played a little club called Roxy and Dukes, and it was
I
one of the
remember
best shows I've ever seen.
that.
And
Really?
yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a tiny little club. I don't know if you remember it, but they closed up. They're not open anymore. But it was a really almost
Mm-hmm.
a punk type of place. But you guys were great that night, and it was an intimate setting, which was nicer yet. So then you've done a lot of collaborations too. I see with all different types of people, and I don't know if you want to mention any of those.
Well, really, like the most important collaboration is with my friend and like musical partner and also business partner, Bernhard Wüstheinrich, a very German name.
That does, right? Very much so.
We started a band called Centrozoon together.
Okay, I saw that.
Yes, and that really was like our research and development department, let's say, musically, for a long time. We started playing together in '96, and we're still
Wow.
playing together, still working together, and that was really sort of like the cradle of my style and of my risky behavior in
There you
musical
go.
territories, right?
That's
So
great. Hey, you gotta take risks, right? There's an
yes,
audience for this stuff.
yes. And then there was like Ian Boddy from the UK was one of my first collaborators, and we would put out albums. We're still putting out albums under our names. And Robert Rich
Oh
is,
yeah. I
you
hope to
know,
interview him too, because I've known him from a long way back.
he's amazing. And I only, just earlier today, I listened to the first album we did together called 11 Questions,
I
which
gotta check that out. 11
really,
questions.
really surprised me how great it was, right? Like sometimes if you don't listen to an album for a decade, like, and you realize
Right.
I actually did good work even back in the day, right? So
Well, it's good. You don't listen to something for a while that you've done, and it says, oh, this is held up. Like the band I was in, Liquid. People are still playing our music.
yeah,
40
it's
years
awesome.
later, it just doesn't get
Yes.
old, and that's what your stuff too. I mean, it's ahead of its time too. So sometimes people have to catch up with it, or they don't hear it, and then they find it. So do you still put out vinyl, right? The vinyl records?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, still, I mean, again, in a way.
That's
the very first ever vinyl I put out was with Centrozoon in like 2002 or 2001. Can't
okay.
remember. And then there was like a decade and more where there was no vinyl. And
Right, right.
I made the acquaintance of a very nice man who is sort of like a part owner of a pressing plant, and that's what made it possible for us to actually release vinyl and like really short runs, like 80 copies and stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Not that it's
That's
it's a
good, but
big
just
business,
keeps it.
but it's
It
yeah.
makes it unique because it's limited, so it becomes rare. And then there's just vinyl addicts out there now that really have a serious interest in it.
Actually, this my most recent collaboration album, which is called Sea of Hopeless Angels, um,
Okay.
has just been released on cassette as well.
Wow, cassette.
Compact cassette, right?
That's amazing. I
Yeah,
mean, all the formats we went through, right? You had the 4-track uh,
yeah.
Tascam, then you had ADAT, you had all this, and now
Yeah.
computers, and people are still
I actually
enjoying.
I actually worked a lot with just stereo, DAT tape, just stereo. Like
Right.
most of my like my first 6 or 7 albums were recorded just live to stereo, because
Oh
that's
wow.
the recording technology I had available, in the 90s. Just a
Right.
Sony, like a small Sony DAT recorder.
Right. I remember that. But they sounded so good. The
Sounded
quality.
really,
Oh, quality
really,
was pristine.
yes.
Great with that stuff. Now they crunch everything down. Some of these artists, it's just there's some terrible stuff out there.
I don't know. I don't
What
know.
can you
I
say?
like I like experimental music. So for me, like the sound quality, let's just call it, is like the last thing I listen out
Oh,
for.
okay.
For me, it's about the vibe. So that's why if the vibe is right, I don't care. There's
Uh,
like an album I made in 2005 or 6 called Trepanation, which was all about degradation of audio. So
oh, about that.
I had a friend program like a batch process for me on his PC, which would send a file repeatedly through an MP3 encoder.
Oh, wow. How about
So like,
that?
there are like 4 tracks on the album that use this technique where it's degraded, like with the MP3 artifacts and everything. And I like this kind of experiment. Anything that is kind of like pushing a certain process or a certain technology. I like that a lot. So, and like if I listen to an old bootleg recording, like of an old field show
Oh,
or
yeah.
show, it doesn't matter to me what it sounds like. Just the excitement of hearing that music again live,
Oh, I know.
and a new interpretation. Like maybe like a new note here and there, or just like a different tempo and stuff like that. I love that.
I mean, his drummer, when he had Simon Phillips playing with him, it was just incredible. What a
Yes,
drummer.
yes,
Now,
yes.
there's a label here down in Texas. They do experimental noise music. Elevator Bath is the name
Okay.
of the label, and I'm going to have Colin, who runs the label, on
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. But all the records he puts out are noise kind of related, but they're using test equipment, just making sound, and
Yes.
it's really very interesting. The music he puts out.
For me, music was always something, for lack of a better term, holistic, right? It's not really about how you play an instrument. It's not about if you even play an instrument. It's about creating a world, creating a sound world, creating a vibe. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not the greatest word, but I think you
Right.
know what I mean, right? And so I've been, also exposed to contemporary art a lot, and that there's an overlap between like sound art and noise music and blah blah blah. And now I've been part of those circles as well
Wow.
for decades. I'm really like very much, I know my shit.
I know you do. I can just see by your bio. I don't have you don't have to tell me that. I know that. I for sure. And what about this instrument, the war guitar that you created? That really an
Yeah, I mean,
amazing instrument.
yeah, I used to play the Chapman stick, and then there was like a development of that instrument. Well, not really, like a different instrument called war guitar, made by
Right.
Mark War. And I played those like the stick for like 5 years and the war guitar for another 10 years. And then I started designing my own, because at that point, really in the mid 2000s, there was still, I mean, and there still hardly is anybody out there who has ever sort of like decoded the technique, let's say. And my aim with building my own instrument was to build an instrument for the technique, rather than building an instrument that you will have to find a technique for.
Okay.
And that's really what makes the Touch Guitars is the brand of my instrument. Well, you know, I'm not running the business anymore,
Okay.
but it's and this instrument I play is an 8-string guitar, and it's very compact, even though it has the scale length of a bass guitar.
Right.
And it really feels great. It feels like a guitar rather than a bass, but it has the very low notes, it has the very high notes. And with 8 fingers, you can play, you can tap notes on the fretboard. And I've come up with my very own system, sort of like a linear way of playing with both hands.
Oh, wow.
And
So you get in like a flow, right, of 2 hands.
it's a flow thing. And you know, like what is so amazing about it, like yeah, maybe, you know, with a percussion instrument, or if you play like, say, timpani, right?
Right.
Like you have like your 2 mallets, and you play, and you get like this the instrument kind of integrates your body into it, because you played with both hands, and both hands get a sound, right? And
Right.
it's like when you play guitar, you have like fretting, plucking. It's not
Right.
the
Right.
same. It's not the same. It's like if you have an instrument where both hands do the same thing, and you create the same sound, then you kind of like get this feel of like the actions of the hands, and like even the halves of the brain like start
Right. Right. I don't think
become
of it
one.
that way.
And
Right.
it's that feeling of that unity that happens with the instrument, which really for me is very not motivating, even inspiring a lot of the music I make.
Oh, that's
So
great.
coming from that trance feel, you know, or
Right.
trance state of hypnotic movement, let's say, and that's
Right.
a lot of my music comes into existence these days.
Now, do you use a lot of pedals? Do you have a lot of effect pedals, or do you, big?
I do, you know, I do. But you know, the way I always use them in a sort of, how should I say this? Like the reason why I have many is because I always want to use them in new combinations.
Got it.
And because I think that's where the beauty of it lies, to find sort of a new sound, or a new quality of sound, is by combining you know, pedals of, you know, made by different makers and stuff. But having said that, when I'm touring these days, I have like just one multi-unit, which is,
That's what I thought you'd have,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I can't imagine carrying all those pedals around on a tour. You have to have it compact.
You know, I also embraced using the laptop as an effects device early on. Like I
How
remember,
about that?
it's almost 20 years that I've been using a laptop on stage. So, and it's really, you know, if you know how to kind of set up cool stuff in the laptop, it's unbeatable, you know, because like
I'm sure.
you can't buy that many pedals.
No, no, you can't. And I've seen Stickman, and you and Tony really work so well together. And then with Pat on drums, I mean,
Yes.
you guys are really great.
Yeah, it's quite an honor for me to be playing with them. And it's you know, I've it's sort of like, I don't want to say it's a privilege, that's not the right word, but I'm very grateful. Yeah.
Oh, Tony Levin's just, and I saw him way back in the early '80s with Peter Gabriel, and I was like, and King Crimson on
Yeah.
the Discipline tour, and that he had such control of that Chapman stick. I mean, he like brought it into the public eye.
He's basically the only one, right?
I know. You're right. You're right.
Well,
Nobody else I know. I
yeah.
mean, and then Trey Gunn, I remember, and now you're doing a lot with all types of bass sounds, and now your own guitar. It's fantastic. You're
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries. I like that. That's important in music. At
Yeah.
least, for somebody like yourself to keep doing that. I was wondering also about this classical composition you've been working on. This Tamordin
Yes,
yeah,
5:30.
513.
Yeah, that's an old piece already by now,
Right.
but yes, actually, so before I started playing an instrument myself,
Okay.
I already was interested in music composition. So, and I was also lucky that I grew up in a part of Germany where sort of like, let's call it contemporary classical music was sort of popular. Not,
Okay.
but
Hmm.
you could find it on the radio, right? Sometimes, and also on public television. So so I kind of like got introduced to contemporary classical music at a young age, and I started composing when I was like 12 years old or something.
Wow.
And so I've always been there, like nowadays maybe people think of me as a player and then as a composer, but actually I was the composer first. And when I
Hmm.
had the opportunity to have this piece toward Modern 513 performed by an orchestra, because that piece had already existed before, but it was an electronic realization that I had made. And
Okay.
I
Hmm.
met this guy called Thomas Blomster, who is the music director of the Colorado Chamber Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Um, and he transcribed the piece with me and arranged it for a symphony orchestra. That was
Wow.
so
That
that
must have
was
been exciting.
very good. That was very good, and sort of like also I did quite a few projects after that. Like I wrote a pieces for string quartet. There's an album called Heartland with string quartets, which I think is pretty special.
How
Obviously
about that? I have to check
it's
that out.
difficult to get it, for people to hear it, as you know. It's
Right, right.
and most recently I wrote for a piece for harp even, and like other ensembles. And
Hmm.
there's one out there called Suntrance, which I'm super happy with, which is sort of like a composition that's a little bit, how should I say, more listenable to
Hmm.
even like the layman, right? And yeah, and I would love to do more, but it's really these days for me, it's a little bit about survival also.
Right. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't doubt it. Now, do you post your music any place to hear any of this, like on Bandcamp or any site that
Yeah.
we could hear
Bandcamp,
this?
Bandcamp is the sort of like the
Okay.
best source, because I also love it when people buy direct from me, right?
Right.
But obviously, like, music is out there, and I have a YouTube channel with lots of music on it.
Okay. I'll have to, okay. That's good.
Yeah, and like maybe you can link to that when
I
you
will. I'll
post
put
it.
it in the description,
Yeah.
all your information at the end here, because it's such a privilege to have you on today. And because
You
we,
know what? I want to tell you one thing. So about a year ago, well, actually exactly a year ago, I had a friend over who is a like friend student of mine, old student of mine,
okay.
and we sat down and I recorded with him. He was engineering. Recorded with him for 3 days, and
Hmm.
I started to put out that music last year. I can remember June, I think. Um, and so far, it's 6 volumes or 5 volumes. I don't even know
Oh my
of it.
gosh.
But I checked yesterday. It's going to be 16 volumes just from that
Oh
one.
my gosh.
It's
Wow.
called Stream for Consciousness,
Okay.
and
Wow.
it's on YouTube, and it's on all streaming services. So for
Okay.
people,
Great.
just
Wow.
yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
Bandcamp is the best source for my music for sure.
Okay, everybody knows that now. So I'm going to be checking right after the broadcast. I want to hear all your music. It sounds so interesting. You're cutting edge. You really keep pushing the boundaries, and I think that's important nowadays. You get out there and then you're playing live too. Like you have another Stickman tour coming up.
I have a tuner tour. Tuner is with Trey Gunn and Pat Mastelotto. That will be in May. We'll be
Okay.
starting in Phoenix and then going to California and then all the way up to Vancouver, actually.
Wow.
That's going to be May, and in July, Stickman is going to be back on the road for 2 weeks on the East Coast.
Okay.
And yeah, and I'm really hoping and looking forward to having the autumn off.
Oh, imagine to do
touring.
some more new music, right?
Yes,
Now
yes.
what now what's the difference between like tuner and stickmen? Because you have, Pat on
Yeah,
drums, and what is there a
yeah.
different?
You would think that it's similar, but it's not.
Right. How about that? That's funny. I would think so. Not similar, but
Yeah. No,
close.
it's really different. Like even like there's one piece called Cusp that we like one of my Stickman pieces
Right.
that we also play with tuner, and it just feels so different.
How
I
about
play the
that?
same part, play the exact same part, but it feels different, and it's really wonderful, kind of like to see how much impact like the player actually does have on a
Oh,
piece
I'm
of music,
sure.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we know that, but if you experience it, like in the
Right,
flesh,
right.
that's something really, really special.
Well, it's
Yeah,
special when you're a musician. You're in this. You could do a show where you're in the zone, and then the music takes over. I've had that feeling, and it's really something special where the band kind of goes to a whole different level, and you're there, but you're part of this whole thing. It's pretty
yes.
exciting.
And with the tuner, we improvise about a third of the show. So
Okay.
that's very different from Stickman. Stickman music is written
Oh, it
mostly.
is. Okay.
Yeah, like with Stickman, we cover some King Crimson tunes, and
Right.
with Tuner, we cover some King Crimson tunes, but those are different, right? Like with Pat and Trey, I play the Fripp and Adrian parts of the
Oh, okay.
2000, the tunes of the
Wow.
2000s, right?
Right.
With Tony, we play some older stuff. So
I can't imagine that King Crimson tour when they went to Japan with all those restrictions, being in a hotel
oh yeah,
room for
you
six
know, you know,
days.
I
Wow.
was there when the lockdown started.
Oh,
I was
wow.
in Japan the day and the night before the lockdown started because we were playing a show with
Oh, my
Stickman and
gosh. Wow.
Gary Husband, the drummer and keyboard player. He was there with us, and we played one show. And yeah, the next day we were supposed to be on tour there, right?
Oh,
And so
wow.
it was quite special, I have to
You
say.
were lucky to get out of Japan, though. I mean,
But
with
you
the
know what?
lockdown,
No, I didn't.
didn't feel that?
Like the others left the next day. I just said, okay, my ticket is like next week, Wednesday or something, and I stayed.
How about that? Okay, great. I didn't, that's something. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, because it's what musicians go through, right? To make commitments for shows, and there's a lot on
I,
the line.
I tell you that there are so many things that people don't see. So for when I return from a tour and say it's in the US, and I return to Europe, and
Right.
I have like a 7 hour, time difference. Like the jet lag is
Oh,
bad
imagine. Yeah,
for 2 to 3 weeks for me,
I
really.
can imagine.
So it's super tough, and then on top of that is the exhaustion. The
Oh,
being
yeah, imagine.
exhausted from the 24/7 work that you're doing when you're on the road.
Right.
So
I don't know how Tony does it. I mean, he's touring with all these people, and it's amazing. I guess he's used to it, or some musicians.
the trick is to never stop, really.
I guess so.
The problem is when you stop, and that's like one of the problems for
How about
me,
that?
because I occasionally have a couple or 3 months even.
Right.
And so then it takes a long time to get back into the flow of things at home. But then then I have to leave again. So it's
Oh man, yeah, that's what that I can imagine. That
yeah,
can really do it. And then what was this? The King Crimson project, was that with Tony? I'm sure Tony
yeah. That
also.
was Stickman plus Adrian Blue Power Trio,
Oh
and
wow.
the concept was that we would play like a set of Adrian Blue's band, set of Stickman, right, and
Right.
then like a set together, the six-piece playing,
Oh wow. Okay.
and we did that in 2011. And back then it wasn't called Crimson Project, it was called Two of a Perfect Trio was the name of that
Okay.
project, right? and that then became the Crimson Project, and like Robert Fripp gave us that name back then, and we played a total of about 120 shows with that band
Holy smoke! Wow.
in like 2.5, no, 3 years, I think it was.
Wow, that's a lot of gigs. That's a
Yes.
lot of stuff. Now I hear there's another super group now with called Beat that Adrian Belew's a part of with
Yes.
Danny Carey and Tony.
Yeah.
So
I've known about this for 5 years or so.
oh, about that.
Finally, the word is out. Yeah, I mean it's great. I'm looking forward to what it's going to sound like.
I can imagine.
I can only imagine.
I'm sure. I'd love to interview those guys. I don't know if they're ever up for it. Tony or Pat, maybe mention
I'll
something.
just ask. Just
They're hard
ask.
to get a hold of, though. That's the thing. I'd have to get from the information after the show or something.
Well, you've written
Just
to
go
me
on
on
their
Facebook,
Facebook
so
site.
you can try the same with everybody.
Right, right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. So, what are future plans coming up besides the touring? I mean, you're going to be doing more collaborations coming up.
So yes, I mean what I'm doing is, there's one thing we haven't talked about is I'm also teaching the touch guitar.
Oh, wow.
And so I have a big pool of students who work with me. And this year, I'm focusing again on doing group classes.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
seminars, workshops where people actually meet in, real life and
Oh,
work.
wow.
And we're going to have one of those in August, and maybe later in the year, one in Berlin, here in Germany. And then, like really I'm off the touring business, which will end
Right. Touring business.
in
Right.
late August. In late August,
Okay.
I'll be back here in Germany. I do want to kind of like, redirect my attention to, like whatever new is going to happen. Like at this point, I don't want to plan any personal projects. I love and I do, always work on some music with other people as a co-producer or as a
Right.
producer. And that's sort of like what I guess I will be doing next after the touring. There's also going to be finally a Stickman album. But you see, like with the beat thing, so Tony's going to be on the road.
Right. Right.
It's going to be next year when we have the Stickman album. But in May, we're going to release a new tuner album, which
Oh,
is
wow. Okay. I'll look for
really,
that.
again, because you said you like the really special stuff.
Right.
Um, it's a full album that is just produced versions of our live improvisations. So it really doesn't sound like it's improvised because it sounds so great, let's say.
No.
It doesn't have the vibe of a live recording really anymore, but everything's been created live and is very, very special and very out there. I
Wow.
you
I
know
got to
and
check that out. Now
I'm
you
really,
got
I'm really proud. I'm really proud that I'm working with people and that I still have the energy to do things that are not popular.
That's good. I like hearing that. That's great. That's better yet. But you are popular in a certain circle of fans, though. That's the thing. That's what's
For
really
sure,
nice.
for sure. But like the sometimes it's frustrating to see that like all these like now it's decades of work, right? Like it's really doesn't mean that much sometimes. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way.
well, it's hard at times, but you must have a lot of people asking you to work, right? So that's you have to pick and choose what you want to do, right? Because you
No,
know,
I mean, I'm always like, let's put it that way. Like, I am always busy. Yes, I have stuff to do, but
right,
I love when new people approach me because I think like I'm still, like I said, I'm still hungry, So I
right,
just
right.
feel like at a certain point when things become repetitive, I like meeting new people and like working with new people
That's
always.
good. That's
Yeah,
good. That's the way to do it because then you get new vibe, a new feel of
exactly.
what you feel like doing.
That's the whole reason for doing those collaborations, because I do believe that what I do on my own is cool and valid, right? And I love it.
Right, right.
But it's also exciting to work with somebody else because then you get strange mishmash
Right.
influences, right? And I love that.
Like that 16-part recording your work, 16-part project. I got to hear that. That's
16,
something.
About 16 hours of music, yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Well, that's what happens. You never know, right? You get all that. Now, do you record every show like with Stickman or Tuner?
Yes, we do.
That's good.
And most actually get recorded because like sometimes there's a technical problem or something, but most of them got recorded. And I have a huge archive of shows.
Wow, I can imagine.
Stickman has a Bandcamp page called Stickman Bootlegs. It's called Stickman Bootlegs.
Okay, I got to put that up.
That's where I'm putting up like actual real audience recordings that people that I find on the internet. Actually,
how about that? Okay.
Yeah. And also I'm putting up like better recordings that we made, like board recordings and stuff.
Because I'll put that on the link too. I want to make sure I get everybody out here that's listening, finds your music and enjoys it. So this has been a great conversation, Markus. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but if you want to talk again sometime, maybe after these tours or next year, I'm going to keep
let's say September.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Because I'm going to keep the podcast going. I started it 2 weeks ago, and I've been getting so much interesting. You get such a different view when you talk to somebody, even people I know like this. What their background was and how they got involved with music. It's really interesting how people want to hear about.
Yeah, good luck with it, and just keep
going.
Thank you. Keep going, and it'll grow.
And I'm also putting up rare videos now of like the Liquid Band because there's not much out there as far
I actually saw that today.
Did you?
It was great.
It's pretty neat stuff. I mean, we were really very unusual sound. Yeah. And nobody's been able to copy us. That's been the unique part of it. There's hard to be a cover band of Liquid, because you had our singer alone, I never knew what he was saying, what he was singing. So that's what makes it unique. But anyway, Markus, this has been very nice. Thank you for doing this. And I'll put all the links up and keep in touch. And, anybody else wants to talk to a show, let me know or have them send me information and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great night in Germany.
Yeah.
Take care. Thanks a lot again.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.